Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffins.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello, everybody.
Ruben Bressler.
Good morning, Magic Mikes.
Yeah, because we do this in the kind of morning, afternoonish where you're at.
For me, it's like, I still got sleepy dust in my eyes.
You just roll out of bed. It's time to
I literally roll out of bed and do this.
Well, you were up earlier than me today. You had sent a...
That's true.
So Ruben lovingly always has to, always needs a reminder of when we record because time zones are hard. And so I was the one that slept until noon today. And so when I woke up, Ruben was like, what time are we recording? And I'm like,
Well, honestly, I've been having I've been actually sleeping a regular schedule. Because I don't have any, it's weird. When I have things to do in the morning, I can't do them. But when I don't have a schedule, I go to sleep at 10 p.m. and I wake up early in the morning.
Same. I do that too.
It is a blessing and a curse. So I was up early this morning and I did some exercise and went for a walk and did a little bit of emails and, middle of the day already for me.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. I will always talk a really big game on Friday night. It's like, I'm going to sleep in so long tomorrow, you won't even know it. Then I'm up at 9 on a Saturday, like a jerk.
I'm generally up at 7:38. It's just, it's baked in. I can't stop now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 mono black humans. Ruben?
Well, Thomas Jensen would like to have a conversation about one particular card. Sir Conrad would like to have a word, Aaron. From the not at all busted in half Throne of Eldraine, he has 5 power for 5 mana in black at uncommon. He's a self-fulfilling engine that runs away with games in limited and a reliable presence in the casual ends of Historic, Brawl, and the I no longer wish to have friends tables of Commander. As a character, he's so relatable to the real humans playing the game. He spent 2020 doing what we all did, spending time with his cats and learning how to bake. Those two are totally unrelated, and absolutely nothing suspicious happened. Don't worry about it.
This was one of the funniest comments I had seen.
It's a really clever way to frame that.
Yeah, wonderful comment. Thanks for being a part of the show. Thomas, please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them.
That's right.
She was reminiscing about a block just a few minutes ago. It's like...
And this comment about Sir Conrad talking about how 2020 went rolls right in to our theme for this episode.
Mm-hmm. It certainly does, as we talk about the cards of 2020. That said, we do want to thank CoolStuffins.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate.
My list isn't weak. What are you
Your
talking
list
about?
is weak. Your list got no game.
Well, to be fair, we have Evan's list, Aaron's list, and Ruben's top 10, so I don't even have a list.
It's true. You don't even got one. Nothing. Speaking of, you ain't got a number 10 either.
It's true. Jeez. I do not have a number 10. We are a little bit all over each other for 2020.
A little bit.
Very powerful year, but a lot of that power was consolidated in a couple dozen cards, and so my number 10, 9, and 8 are all higher on somebody else's list.
Oh, jeez.
Well, Aaron, what's your number 10?
I didn't even need to wake up yet. I could have just gone back.
You could have stayed over there, and I just called you or something. We're ready.
I had a difficult time with this list because, the thing that I typically look for when I make my lists is I look for cards that have had an impact on multiple formats. And I think that speaks to the power level of the cards that they've been pumping out lately, is that these cards are having an impact on formats other than standard and going all the way up to legacy and vintage. And so it was really hard for me to decide, did I want to settle for just one format or two, or, how far up the chain did I want to go? But for my number 10, speaking of chains, this character appears to have chains all over them. And I have certainly broken those chains before. This was a card, people love to use the meme of Dredge got a new toy, and a lot of times they're wrong, but in this particular case, we did get a new toy, and it was just as awesome as expected. It injected some new life into modern Dredge, and even made a splash in Legacy Dredge as well. My number 10 is Ox of Agonis. So Ox of Agonis is 3 colorless and 2 red. It is an Ox with 4 power and 2 toughness. When it enters the battlefield, you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. Sounds good. But if you don't want to pay 5 for it, which you know I'm not, you can also escape it for just 2 red. You can exile 8 other cards from your graveyard, and you can cast this from your graveyard for its escape cost. So you are casting this. So Containment Priests don't count. You can still get your Ox. It's fine. And when it escapes, it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. So this card really just pushed Modern Dredge into overdrive. Like, it's very easy to get this going on turn 3. And so if you can do this, you can just really run away with the game between your creeping chills, between the army that you'll assemble. And it is a nice way to get around Containment Priest, like I said, because if you read Containment Priest, it only says if you didn't cast this, if you didn't pay for this. And so you are paying for this technically. And so Containment Priest really doesn't count. And so great card, a lot of fun. And it's just a 5/3 when you escape it. Like, you will take that. It's fine.
I mean, yeah, you know, this thing that can just be bought over and over again. So you can dredge insanely amounts of cards and do stupid things constantly.
I do love how every single card in Theros Beyond Death harkened back to something specific. In this case, the 10th labor of Hercules, the cattle of Geryon, who was a legendary bull cow thing that had 3 heads and 3 sets of legs.
Yeah.
So drawing 3 cards matches up perfectly.
Kind of works out. Well, that card was sweet. And my number 10, let me tell you, you know, one of the big lessons of 2020 is that organized play is not as important as a lot of people thought it was. And I mean, it was good and it was important. And hey, I mean, Cool Stuff ran a big, huge chunk of their business off of it. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But when you cut all that out and it's only digital, the biggest casual cards are still $38-something. And you're like, that
crazy.
Casual's going to love it. Because, man, when you looked at the cards from the year and you sorted it by EDH rec and you found out that almost 20% of EDH decks on that website, we're talking 20,000 almost, have Fierce Guardianship in them. This card is it's a $38 card. It's one of the most expensive cards that were printed last year.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. It's a force and negation for commanders. Fierce Guardianship is a blue and 2 generic mana for a rare instant. It showed up in the Commander 2020 decks. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and it counters target non-creature spell. That's exactly what you want it to do. It will go in every single blue deck and from a commander that you will have, because who doesn't want this effect?
God.
It's
I
incredible.
had no idea that it was in that many decks.
Too. The green one is a fog. The white one gives everything indestructible. The black one's like a Swords to Plowshares without the life gain part. It's just an exile. I don't remember what the red one does, but yeah, it's a cycle.
It's a whole cycle of them, and this one was the winner, let me tell you. And it's just
crazy talk.
Super expensive, super great. Like they now basically created another sort of ace in the hole where they can make special versions of it. Like they can make Secret Lairs versions of it. Like this is just one of those cards that's going to be one of the best EDH cards ever, period.
When they come out with Commander Collection Blue, this will certainly be in it.
I certainly hope so. Yeah. Because the card's sick. Let's move on here to number 9. Aaron, what you got?
My number 9, we talked about Oxyvaganus bringing new life to Dredge. My number 9 also brought new life to a popular tribal archetype, which hadn't seen a lot of love for a while, and certainly really didn't have a good form of card advantage like this, and even made me want to play this archetype. My number 9 is Conspicuous Snoop. So Conspicuous Snoop is 2 red. It was originally printed at M21. It's a Goblin Rogue with 2 power, 2 toughness. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast Goblin spells, so note not just creatures, but remember them Goblin tribal cards? That's a spell. It's a Goblin spell from the top of your library. As long as the top card of your library is a Goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. So Legacy Goblins very much became a thing again. Modern Goblins became a thing for a little while there. People have been trying to make this a thing in Vintage as well. We've seen some success with Goblins in the last couple weeks or so.
Because you've got access to Recruiter in Vintage.
Exactly. And so, EDH, this was a huge find as well. Goblins are popular in Historic as well. I mean, this card really did just push Goblins over the top there. And, that's true with a lot of tribal strategies. Sometimes you just need one card, and it can change everything.
I feel like there was they sat down at R&D and they're like, we got a weird hole to fill or whatever. And somebody's like, let's make a deck really good. What does this deck need to come back, right? What does Goblins need to come back to the forefront? Something exactly like this.
Something card advantage E.
Right.
And also a 2-drop. I remember when I was playing Historic Goblins for a while there, and I was like, this deck is great, but I'm like really needing another 2-drop in mono red that isn't Instigator.
Sure.
It isn't just make 2 1/1s.
Right.
I need one other 2-drop, just one. And then this got previewed for the core set, and I'm like, well, we did it. Like, well, this is perfect. This is everything I've ever wanted in a Magic card.
I mean, when the Krinko's on top, I mean, it's a hug from Jesus, y'all.
It's crazy.
You can't.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Oh, of course. And then Boggart Harbinger, Kiki Jiki conspicuous Snoop combo became a thing for half a second. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love it. And the art is just adorable.
Yeah, the art's super great. And so, yeah, I'm totally happy with this. Like, what does Merfolk need? Let's do it M22. Come on.
That's right.
Let them go nuts. I don't know what they need.
Go around.
Let's figure it out.
Right. Yeah, what do we need to make what's another good one?
Like we need let's make Standstill.
We need
good again.
Elves got some love. You know, they gave
Elves got
Allosaurus
love.
Shepherd
That's
to
true.
elves. So
Right.
yeah,
That's
it seems like they're just kind of going around the table and
Hey, let's
playing
do
horns.
it. Absolutely.
Soldiers. Let's give birds something good.
There we go.
Right?
Like a sick bird deck.
How about a cleric? You know what I mean? Let's go back to Onslaught days and get some crazy cleric
Love
action
it.
happening.
I mean, we're about to have a D&D set, so there better be some good
Yeah.
freaking
It's
true.
clerics.
That's a good
And there's
point.
some nice clerics in Kaldheim too, I think.
It's true.
Yeah. So let's move on here to my number 9, which I certainly didn't want to leave off a card that I had as a number 1 in the set in which it was featured because I love it. The card is absolutely ridiculous, and it's about $12 to $18 whether you want it the extended board version or not. But you can't. I mean, could you have any more of a Timmy over the top gross spell than Apex Devastator? Can you just?
Yeah.
You can't go harder than this. This is ridiculous.
This was very close to my
It
list.
was absolutely insane. 2 green, 8 generic mana for a 10/10. So 10 mana for a 10/10. It's a mythic Chimera Hydra, and it has 4 words on it. Cascade, 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 cascade.
Why is this a $10 card?
I love
Because it says cascade, cascade, cascade.
It's a $10 card because it's a 10/10 for 10.
Yes.
Yes.
For those who don't know, when you cast this spell, you exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost, put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Multiple instances of Cascade, each trigger separately. Yes, they do.
So this is for your Maelstrom Wanderer deck. There's a couple of red, green, blue decks that depend on the Cascade.
I mean, this is your Windmill
mechanic.
Slam, last card in your hand.
Right.
Like, let's go.
Much less if you're playing Animar or something to make it cost less. Yeah, this card is it's so much fun.
It's fun. This is
a slot
fun
machine.
Magic, man. Like,
Yeah.
It started with Shivan Dragon. It ended up with Apex Devastator. That's where we're at. I'm okay
Slam
with
it on the table, man. Let's spin the wheel and go to town.
Let's have some fun. That's what that card says to me. So let's move on here to number 8. This is my first hire, and it appears Aaron has the only number 8.
I do. So this is a card that also stretched all the way back to Legacy and even saw a little bit of play in Vintage. This card helped invigorate these standstill decks, which was another style of deck that hadn't seen play for a while, and even helped. It kind of spawned its own archetype of Shark still. My number 8 is Shark Typhoon.
Nice.
So Shark Typhoon is 5 colorless and a blue. It's an enchantment from Ikoria that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying. Where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You can also cycle it for X, a white, a colorless, and a blue, and discard this card, draw a card, and when you cycle it, you create an XX blue shark creature token with flying. So this was huge. This redefined control. This allowed you to, still cycle to get card draw until you were ready to actually cast this, and also get a blocker or even an attacker that can help you kind of turn the corner when it's time to. But sees play in just about every format right now. If you're doing, and it's fine. The thing I love about this card is that it's so silly and it's fine. You're never going to hear someone say Shark Typhoon needs to be banned. It's just, it's fun. It's a reasonable power level. It's not doing anything too broken, and it's good enough to see play in Legacy. The Miracles decks were running it.
Absolutely.
You had the Standstill decks which were running it in Legacy and Vintage. It's just a fine card, like just fun. Yeah.
This is such a home run. Like
It
when
works on
Magic
so many
doesn't.
levels.
This, of course, won the Mikesy for most loved card of 2020.
Right.
Magic is at its best when it doesn't take itself too seriously. When it can appreciate and be a little bit self-deprecating. And to make a card that is a Sharknado is right exactly dead center
It's right
where
you
it
want
should
to
be.
Yeah. When all the circuits fire and everything works out, it's
perfect.
It's fun. It's exciting. It's playable. Like, it's good enough to be playable in all these decks. It reinvigorates older decks. Like, it just, does all those things.
And it didn't ruin anything. It made everything it touched better. Like 100% agree.
Extended art foil is $43. Goodness gracious. That's not going to go down. Let's put it that
No,
way.
sure
I
ain't.
mean, the shark typhoon's all going up. Just
It's true.
I see what you did there. It throws the sharks further and further, you see.
Yeah.
If you two are at number 7, this is Aaron's first hire.
yeah. Well, 7 and 6 are higher, so I get to take my nap now.
Oh,
Excellent.
fair enough. Well, my number 7 comes from the world of Jumpstart. Jumpstart, the product, what did we call it? The set of the year, I think it was?
We did.
Yes. Aaron did not, that's okay. But
Fine.
Jumpstart in and of itself, Jumpstart, the idea that you can buy a pack or 2 packs, shuffle them together and ta-da, you have a thing. Like someone, I think Seth today, Saffron Olive was saying that, what if they sold 50 card
Partner.
packs? Yeah, and you just, and you shuffle them together, there's your commander deck. Like that's a thing you could do. But not only was Jumpstart an amazing idea, absolutely home run, seriously, give that person a steak dinner. But the idea that you can create another version of that you can put these cards that are so freaking powerful. But if you're only really going to see them when you open them in Jumpstart packs, it's fine. Because the only other place you're going to see them is freaking Legacy. Because Allosaurus Shepherd, as we had discussed earlier, is the real deal. This thing is $86.
Yeah.
It's $86. I'm gonna hurt myself. What is happening? This is a 1 green 1/1. It's a mythic elf shaman. It's mythic, all right. It can't be countered. Green spells you control cannot be countered.
Green spells.
It's insane. For 2 green and 4 generic mana until end of turn, each elf creature you control has base power and toughness 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types.
So you don't really need a bunch of the stuff that you previously needed in green, or in elves, I should say specifically. You don't really need Craterhoof Behemoth. I mean, you still run one because you want the haste.
Right.
But this allows you to, if you Green Sun Zenith for this protects your natural orders, much less being an elf itself, being a 1/1 for 1. It's just an absolutely crazy card. You don't even need to combo. You can just have this. Yeah. You can just be like, all right, well, I got nothing else to do. Here's some 5/5s.
Right.
Yeah. Legacy is a deck that thrives on its blue cards. You've got your Dazes, you've got your Force of Wills, now Force of Negation. They love their Spell Pierces, and none of that really matters anymore. And so, when you have to force a Delver deck or a Snowgo deck to, really play fair and allow all of your cards to happen, elves can spin out of control very, very quickly. Your Glimpse of Natures also won't be countered, so you can just kind of start running away with the game at that point. And elves got put back on the map because of this card.
It's like, again, what does this tribal deck need in order to thrive? Goblins needed Conspicuous Snoop. Elves needed this.
Elves needed counter control.
They just put it directly right where it needed.
Green spells, though. It'd be one thing if it just said elves. Right. It'd be one thing if it said elves can't be countered. I think it'd still be serviceable, but when you say green spells, that opens up everything.
Everything. And this is going to happen. You cannot counter it. It's just going to happen. And that is an incredible power to put on a 1-mana 1/1. What was the Ruben, what was that, the 0/1 that when you attacked your opponent couldn't play spells?
Xanthid Swarm?
Xanthid Swarm, yes. Who needs a Xanthid Swarm anymore?
Right. The old Storm thing?
Yeah.
Sideboard card?
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my
Xanthid
god.
Swarm, and then there was Hope of Girapur, which
then
sometimes
there was Hope of
you would
Girapur
use if
later.
you weren't agreeing.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's move over here to number 6. Let's see.
Well, I have a number 7.
Well, I'm sorry, you do have a number 7. That's right. Sorry. We were so used to skipping you, Ruben.
I know. Well, here we are. I finally have a pick.
Sure, go for it.
Or a card to talk about. And this card originally was not printed in 2020. It was originally printed in 2004. But the version printed in 2020, I wanted to make mention of, because this year, 2020, was really the year of the Secret Lair. And the first Secret Lair of the year was the year of the Rat. And before any of the other histrionics that came along, before any of the other spectacular arts that came along, before anything else, we were talking about Marrow-Gnar kind of all January. Because it was the first reprint in a while. The art is beautiful from Jen Ravenna. This was an early favorite for me for art of the year. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. Marrow-Gnar, for those of you who don't know, originally was printed in Champions of Kamigawa. Marrow-Gnar is a 5-mana 2/3, 3 colorless black for legendary creature Rat Rogue. All rats have fear, and you have tap and sacrifice a rat. Create X 1/1 black rat creature tokens, where X is the number of rats you control. And the art... oh my gosh. The art is so cool. It's like a sashimi hangout. They're just having a nice family dinner.
Well, a sumptuous feast with friends.
It's beautiful.
Starts the new year off on a good paw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just is it feels good.
It's quality. I like it. All right. Okay, so now we've covered all the number 7s. Moving here to number 6. Ruben, what's number 6?
Once again, the secret lair this year was the big hullabaloo. And we've talked a little bit already about some of the cards that were in this secret lair, the very first secret lair to feature mechanically unique cards.
Oh boy.
But I really wanted to highlight the one that sort of took us by surprise because it wasn't announced initially, and that is Lucille.
Ooh.
Lucille is a colorless and a black legendary artifact equipment from Secret Lair drop The Walking Dead. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has menace. And whenever equipped creature attacks, the defending player sacrifices a creature. If they do, you create a walker token, which are 2/2s, and it equips for 4 colorless. This is honestly a legacy playable card. I haven't seen much done with it yet, but it's pretty powerful.
Equip for 4 is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, that might be a bit
Commander,
much.
though, this is entirely playable.
Oh, and Commander,
it's
this is
affordable.
great.
$12.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, here we are, right? We're back at the secret lair with Walking Dead, the biggest secret lair of all time. And even if it was the biggest of all time, if you had bought that secret lair, it still would have given you back more than you paid for it. Like, that's just kind of how it works sometimes. And
That's the toss it in the closet, Evan Irwin stamp of approval right there.
mine's in the closet over there, just hanging out. I'll see it later when my grandkids need college. But still, like, this Lucille card was like it was a cool bonus. Like, I appreciate it. They didn't have to do this.
And we didn't know that this was coming. Like, we knew Rick, we knew Glenn, we knew Daryl. Like, we knew all those cards were in it. But when you saw Lucille, you were like, oh, cool, we have this other thing.
Yeah, it was really nice. Nice little bonus there. Moving on here to my number 6. My number 6, I think right now is probably the best card in Standard, maybe, possibly. This card is stupid. Wizards, like... you know, last year, not last year, but in 2019, because God, the pandemic, because a couple years ago, they were basically saying that, you know, we're gonna ratchet it up for the fall set. And we're like, yeah, I've heard it. Like, I've been in Magic a long time, and I can't tell you how many times it's been like, oh, they're going to knock the socks off with so-and-so. Like, I got wrapped up in Masters 25 and Iconic Masters hype too. It happens. But no, man, they blew the freaking doors off with Throne of Eldraine and just blew them off continuously throughout the year last year, which was ridiculous. And every card has so many words on it now. It's nuts. And the raw power of those stupid Titans, including Croxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. This card is stupid, and I don't like it. It's a black and a red mana. It's 2 mana, y'all, for a 6/6 mythic legendary Elder Giant. It enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it escaped. Okay. When it enters the battlefield, or attacks, because that's the fairest sentence in Magic, each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life, and you can escape it for 2 black and 2 red. You exile 5 other cards from your graveyard, which means you can cast this from your graveyard for its escape cost. This card is absurd. It does everything. It has so many stupid little triggers, little things you can do with the Witch's Oven and all this other crap.
I will never forget where I was when I discovered you could do that, because I picked up the red-black sacrifice deck in Standard because I love aristocrat decks. And I remember just the moment when I was watching somebody stream with it so that I could learn how to play it. And like, so you would do it. So you do that with the death trigger on the stack. You can go like Village Rites, or you can go Priest of Forgotten. Blew my mind. I was like, oh crap. Like, my world opened up that day. Amazing art by Vincent Proce. All of the little mouths everywhere is terrifying. This card is one of the reasons why Jund has become obsolete in Modern yet again. It's really boiled down to just a Rakdos mid-range deck. You know, you're running Croxa, you run the Magmatic Channeler, you run a Bone Crusher Giant, you still have your Lilianas and the Thoughtseize package, but, you know, you don't even really need a third color at this point, because this card, along with all the cheap discard and everything else, you know, really can just change the game for you. And so, you know, was a power. And I actually think I prefer this one. Like, of the 2 Titans, I think this one is very niche. I think not every deck that's running black and red wants to be doing this. And so I'm fine with this card existing. But just when you awaken to all of the neat things you can do, it really does feel like a level up moment.
Yeah. theoretically, there are 3 more Titans that exist in the world of Theros, and I'm trying to find their names.
Oh boy, come on, DM.
Right, because they're in the book, right? They're in the book somewhere.
Yes. Here we go. We have Uro, the Titans of Nature's Wrath. Flage, Titan of Burning Wind.
Yes.
Was an all-consuming whirlwind of fire. Skotha, Titan of Eternal Dark, was the utter darkness of a starless night.
That's the black-blue, probably.
Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger, embodied the terror of death and its sensational gluttony for new creatures to consume. And that might be it. That might be the 4.
I can't wait for this. Yeah, give me all of them.
I mean, I'll take it. Like they're all expected to be dumb. Like the Wizards has created a sword situation, a sword of X and Y. You have created Titans. This is how Titans work, and they're going to have to be this good. So you better strap on and let's see what happens. Like,
hold on to your butts.
Do the thing. This card is just nuts. I mean, the value is unbelievable, and it's frustrating as hell to play against, and it's so satisfying to play with, which is why I don't like it that much. It's being silly. Let's move here to number 5. Aaron, what's number 5?
So my top 5 are all banned in at least one format, which really speaks to, again, the power level of the cards.
2020,
we saw
everybody.
a significant number of bannings in formats I didn't even know people still played. So, that shows you what we're up against. So this was a card I got to experience. People tried to make this a thing in Legacy and Vintage to various degrees of success, but it was just a complete nightmare in Brawl and Historic, where it was very, very quickly banned. My number 5 is Winota, Joiner of Forces. So Winota is 2 colorless, a red and a white. She's a legendary creature, human warrior from Ikoria. Whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn, and you put the rest of the cards at the bottom of your library in a random order. So in older formats, you would pair this with like Goblin Rabblemaster.
Right.
And then just whoop, you get your little trigger,
Just
you get like an
multiple token
Angrath's
creators,
Marauders. It was stupid. And I don't play Brawl and Historic, so maybe you two can chime in on that. But banned in 2 formats, like this card.
I mean,
there was an entire section of Standard and Modern and Pioneer from the last year where basically all you wanted to do was get Winota into play with little idiots on
An
the
Agent
board.
of Treachery,
And get Agent of Treachery and Angrath's Marauders onto the board.
Angrath's Marauders, like there's just been, I can't tell, there's so many times where I will tweet about something and it just ends up being like the best freaking thing you can do at the time. Like when I played in the pre-release for Kaladesh and I played against Smuggler's Copter and I'm like, my God, that card was stupid. And when I played with Winota and Angrath's Marauders, I'm like, this is a combo deck.
It's crazy.
It has turned not just into like a fun aggro whatever.
Boros, like wow.
Exactly.
And
you'd attack with your selfless saviors and who cares what else, right? And yeah, I mean, it's just this card confused me so much. Like I love it. I think that Boros did need to have a big over the top card like this, but building a standard environment in which you want enormous expensive humans and then tiny inexpensive non-humans seems backwards to me.
It's a little weird, right? But
I just don't,
for those who don't know, Angrath's Marauders was a 7-mana 4/4 that doubled all the damage that you dealt.
Which you were not paying for.
Which you were not paying for.
From Ixalan or something.
Yes, it was a rare from Ixalan. No one even noticed. What's this card? Wait a minute. I had to go craft 4 on Arena.
Yeah.
No one noticed it until you noticed it.
Wow. Well,
and then you're going to give your Winotas because you don't want to face it.
Give your 2-week Winotas. Got it. All right.
I remember the first time I tried playing this in Legacy, I, of course, I was so proud of myself because I remember playing this deck and like I'm doing okay with it and I'm thinking like, oh, I'm playing this Winota deck, I'm not going to face the usual hate that I'm used to, and then somebody plays a Containment Priest and I'm like, oh crap. There goes your cage. Your priest still applies here.
It's a thing. So we don't have a number 5. They're both higher on someone else's list. But we're going here to number 4. Ruben, what's number 4?
My number 4 is on my list for a couple of reasons. And my number 4 was originally printed in alpha, but got new life in 2020. 1, because there is a Judge Academy version that went gangbusters because it is incredible. And 2, because the original art for Demonic Tutor by Douglas Schuler set a brand new record at $186,000 sold for the original art. Demonic Tutor, for y'all that don't know, colorless and a black sorcery. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. The new art from Anna Steinbauer Mama says it's my imagination, but I know you'd never lie to me. With the creepy doll? Oh my gosh.
No eyes.
It's amazing.
It's so good and creepy as hell. And this is one of the ways that, Wizards can really reward the judge program. The judge program, the whole history of it is kind of a hot mess nowadays. Back in the day, it was the most mundane program that existed. It was, we're here to make sure the game's going right, and here's an envelope full of stuff, and we'll see you later. That turned into a huge problem. So now we have a whole third-party person who's going to get these promos into the hands of judges, the people who make sure our events run when we have events eventually.
When we have events again.
Yeah.
And I love that little owl, the new Judge Academy little owl thing. I love it. That's a
so
great
cool.
symbol.
Very, very nice. Let's move on here to Aaron's number 4. What you got?
So my number 4 is appropriate because it has 4 power and 4 toughness, but it's not banned in 4 formats. It's only banned in 3. Why does this card exist? My number 4 is Omnath, Locus of Creation.
My number 5.
So Omnath,
My
Locus
number
of
8.
Creation costs 4, 1 red, 1 green, 1 white, and 1 blue. Printed in Zendikar Rising, legendary creature Elemental. When Omnath, Locus of Creation enters the battlefield, draw a card, because of course. And then it has Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, you get Omnath's casting cost. What?
Yeah.
If it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you do not control. This card is ridiculous. This is seeing play in both Modern and even Legacy. Like, this is what people want to be doing right now. They want their growth spirals. You pair this with another card, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And this card just runs away with games. It is just ridiculous.
This card compares favorably to Siege Rhino. Like, this is a free Siege Rhino that then pays you dividends on future turns. And also replaces itself. And also, by the way, you can, like, exile it with Force of Will. Like, this card is... The play patterns with Omnath made it so that it was my least favorite card of the year. Because every game was exactly the same. Every game was, Fabled Passages and play this and it was just so annoying. And, like... It was good against aggro because you gained life. It was like whoever had the Omnath advantage had the edge in control mirrors. Like, it was good against every archetype. It was just so boring.
It was here. I think what we had is what I would describe as the perfect playtest experience, which is a designer should have sat down with this version right here, played with it, and been like, "Wow, that's awesome feeling," and then they'd done it again and be like, "Wow, that's the exact same thing I did the game before. That's the exact same thing before." And then they go, "Wow, that's stupid. Let's not make this card. That's awful."
Yeah.
But no, they didn't do that part. They just gave it to us, and we're like, "Wow, this is dumb." It's not even like. It's not fair. It's not cool. It's just overwhelming. It's like, who gets your Omnath first? Who can rush it out there? Did you get the Genesis Ultimatum? God help us all. Like, it's just, it's such a hot mess. This card was, I don't know, man. What were they
powerful,
thinking?
way too good. There was a period there where every deck I was playing against in Brawl was an Omnath deck.
Just not that deck. And it's like,
and then I had to like rebuild my decks to be like, well, 3/4 of the decks I'm playing against are Omnath, so I might as well put, the Contagion Conundrum, like the blue enchantment, in my Brawl deck. Like, what is happening?
I can't, it's so funny. Can you just imagine 4 years ago us saying, we can do a top 10 banned cards of the year, when there were none, actual 0. This card's dumb. Anyway, it's my number 5, and it was Ruben's number 8, right?
Correct.
Yeah. All right, move on here to my number 4. So let me tell you, as a guy who has tried to enjoy playing mono white decks in my lifetime, and seeing how mono white has gotten so much worse and has gotten damn near unplayable. And like the last time it was good was like Figure of Destiny or something. Like,
well, we had that Benelish Marshall deck that won the Pro Tour, but that was like technically splashing red.
And Thraben Inspector made blue-white flash relevant.
All right, so that was those were close.
I get your point.
We've been lacking in good white cards essentially, and this one I did not see this coming. Actually, I thought it was good, but it turns out to be so freaking good. It's showing up in Modern, it's showing up in Standard, of course, and I absolutely love it. Skyclave Apparition is one of my favorite cards from Zendikar Rising. Funnily enough, almost the exact opposite of Omnath. Like I like Like the gameplay of this card is fantastic. Skyclave Apparition is 2 white and generic mana for a 2/2 rare core spirit. When it enters the battlefield, you exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with converted mana cost 4 or less. And that's a lot, by the way, 4.
That's a lot.
When it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX blue illusion creature token where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. And what I have learned playing Skyclave Apparition is that it doesn't matter if they get the XX. Whatever you got rid of was scarier than the XX.
Was way better. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, this was my number 7. I mean, this card single-handedly breathed new life into Death and Taxes. You know, like you said, Death and Taxes had been, kind of a joke in Legacy for a while. You know, it had been something people tried to make happen in Modern and just never really took off. It was like the fetch in Modern. People kept trying to make fetch happen. And they were like doing black-white taxes and then white taxes and Eldrazi taxes. And it just never really went anywhere until this card happened. And Death and Taxes became a tier 1 deck in Modern. Death and Taxes won one of the legacy events at Eternal Weekend, which is terrifying. I remember my boyfriend was trying to put this, he builds budget commander decks. I remember he was getting ready to do a budget stream and he couldn't use this card after a while because it had skyrocketed in price so much where he's like, it's over my budget. Like I can't put this in my list anymore. And it's all been chalked up to this card where, white gets a lot of criticism, but people point to this and say, yes, more of this, please. Like this is exactly what we need right now.
This is the best white creature in Modern, which is
yeah.
I don't think it's close. It might be I think it's the best white card in the Arena Cube.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, because they don't even have Swords to Plowshares. They don't have balance or nothing. So this is the best white card you could have. And it's just incredible.
It's a blowout with Collected Company. Like it's a great starting point for lots of different types of decks.
All right, so now this is my starting point to hang out for a little bit because my number 3 and my number 2 are higher on someone else's list.
Oh, no.
But, Ruben.
I'm pleased we managed to avoid most of our overlap. We didn't skip any numbers. That was pretty cool.
It's true.
Yeah.
Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 had a shot at being card of the year, most hated card of the year, trauma of the year, and it was for a minute, and then it came back almost back down to earth. Pre-orders for this card were through the roof. They're down to a reasonable number of $65 a piece, merely for your copies of Jeweled Lotus.
Jeweled Lotus.
Jeweled Lotus is a 0 mana artifact from Commander Legends. Tap, sacrifice Jeweled Lotus, add 3 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast your commander.
The foil extended art's going for $380.
Sure, but regular missionary position Jeweled Lotuses were going for $150 pre-order.
Did you just missionary position a Jeweled Lotus?
Yeah, vanilla AM radio Jeweled Lotuses were going for $100. Cards you could get in packs as they were printing the card.
Right, and I assure
we're going for that Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh numbers.
That price existed because people were buying it at those prices. I assure you they were, and they still are. Sure. There's a reason these prices have basically leveled out at $65 a copy from a card that hasn't even been proven to be doing anything at this point.
It's really good in competitive Commander. You want to put this in your Niv Mizzet deck or whatever.
Sure. The reality is if you're just playing everyday Commander with your friends, you probably don't need a Jeweled Lotus. It's fine. And, this card is really emblematic of the concerns that some people have with card design in that they're very clearly designing for Commander. And a lot of people feel like that's kind of a bad thing because, Commander for a long time was about finding that janky rare from Kamigawa that nobody else played and you put it in your deck and it was glorious. And now you have product that seems to be aimed at you and, almost appears to be an auto include where if you're not using this, you are essentially just left in the dust. And so, I've said it before, I do think Commander's in a very interesting place where, they're kind of approaching this critical mass of where do you go from here? Because, the audience has gotten so large and they just seem to want, very different things.
And also, by the way, this was my number 8.
Okay.
And because I think this card is definitely iconic as something from the year. You know what I mean? What happened in this year? Jeweled Lotus showed up. Yes, it's Black Lotus for Commanders. That's a cool sentence, in and of itself. But nowadays, and sort of what you were saying, Aaron, is that, all the good Commander cards are from the last 3 or 4 years, if not the only last 2 years.
The thing I really appreciate about Jeweled Lotus is that it lets players in 2020 play Magic like it was 1992. And what I mean by that is, in 1992, we were playing a Black Lotus and then casting a Shivan Dragon with it. You know what I mean? Like, we were casting just garbage. And we're not comboing.
Right.
We're not storming. We're not doing, like, crazy broken stuff. We're just casting our commanders.
Yeah.
Which, again, we're casting them 3 turns early, and that's crazy, but at least we're still just kind of playing Shivan Dragons. And I think that is a really cool design.
Yeah. I think
Well, the problem is not when they're casting Shivan Dragons, it's when they're casting Grand Augustin, or, you
Sure.
know, and that it's like, welp.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations, you're a terrible person. I don't know what to say to you anymore.
Exactly. That's
Right,
sort of the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
Is that Lotus Missionary? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We're casting braids. Like, I understand that some commanders are more powerful early than others.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're using this to cast our, Ishais, then I think that's fine.
Sure. Aaron, what's number 3?
My number 3 is a card that we all knew was coming. It had those dreaded words of converted mana cost 2 or less, which is typically a dog whistle for Eternal formats, because Eternal formats thrive on their 1 mana cantrips and their cheap spells and things like that. But we had no idea that this card was going to dominate every format that was in and be so good that it had to be banned in Vintage. Do you know when the last time something was banned in Vintage? Like, it's been a while. And it's ironic that I said dog whistle because it's actually a cat.
Right.
My number 3 is LURRUS of the Dream Den. So LURRUS is 1 colorless and 2 hybrid Orzhov mana. So you can either do 2 white, 2 black, or a combination of the 2. It is a cat nightmare, and that's putting it lightly. 3 power and 2 toughness. It has Companion. Each permanent card in your starting deck has to have converted mana cost 2 or less. It has lifelink, and then during each of your turns, you may cast 1 permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. Do you know how many people are out there in the world that want nothing more than to play a Mishra's Bauble over and over and that's all they want to do? That's what they're here for. This card made that dream a reality. People were buying Urza's Baubles, Mishra's Baubles. It changed the game. Burn decks were running this card. Like Modern Burn became LURRUS Burn and was running things like Seal of Flame because they could bring it back over and over again. Soul Guide Lantern, Tormod's Crypt, though that became the form of graveyard hate that people were using. But this card was just ridiculous and ended up getting banned in Legacy because when you pair it with things like Lion's Eye Diamond or Black Lotus, it's just a really, really bad scene. And still a very popular card. There are still people out there that believe that the LURRUS meta, was a golden era for these formats. A very controversial card, but it just had to go. Like, it single-handedly pushed decks out of the format. Like Shops was gone, Dredge was gone. We had no way to keep up with this, which some people thought was a good thing. But when you're pushing entire archetypes out of the format because they cannot keep up with this, because you have essentially a 3-turn clock, because once this thing hits, it's the same. You're never going to beat that lock. And so it really warped the way people built their decks. It warped the decks that people saw. It was just bad. It was bad.
It was just like, what? I know a lot of really wonderful, smart, talented people at Wizards of the Coast. What in the hell were you thinking with Companion? Seriously? In your mind? What was going through it? What said this was okay?
It's like they didn't even test Companion. They were just like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, this is neat.
It's like,
like, what are you talking about? I know people who would like just die on the floor that let you create a mechanic that is, here's a free 8th card every turn ever.
So stupid.
What is happening?
This was, by the way, my number 10 because the entire mechanic got nerfed, nuked, destroyed. Several of them have been, Lutri became one of the first cards ever banned before
it even shut up.
Shit came out. Yorion, 80's the new 60, dominated like a ton of formats. Aaron, you're still in love with Obosh, I assume.
Obosh is fun and neat.
It's all right.
Like, it's fine. It's all right now. Before it was like just race
Guy
to Guy
Ruda.
Yeah, what?
Exactly. Took over the world.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Zerda also got banned in Legacy. There's a bunch because it could go infinite with Basalt Monolith. I mean, every single one of them was ridiculous, and every single one of them was broken because the Companion mechanic is worse on the Storm scale than Storm or Dredge.
Yeah, you can now call it the Companion scale Because
the
what in
companion
the
scale.
world were you thinking?
I think
swear
Dredge
to
is a 9 on the companion scale.
I mean, we lived through that previous season, just sitting there going like, are we all
What
insane?
are they thinking?
This is all you're gonna do, right? This is literally all you're gonna do in standard is play companion decks.
75% of the decks, at least,
at
during
least.
that time, were companion decks.
Yes, it was nuts. I can't. And LURRUS was incredibly powerful, and this thing has been in a ton of different shells, and this one in particular was one of the most sort of egregious ones. This was the one that said, we just don't care about older formats. We just, not even a little bit.
I do want to add, though, that since the nerf, though, it's fine. Like you can play modern LURRUS, and there's not the feeling anymore of dread. You know, you have the mono red Obosh deck, which, fine. Even Yorion. Like, if you want to pay 3 colors for a Yorion, you do that, girl. Like, Yorion still sees play, and I think that's fine. You know, I think if it, and Foresight has said that before, that when they ban something, they don't want to obliterate it. They just want to make it a little harder for you to play that. And so, you know, I do think that the ban ultimately was a good thing, and that the companions are still seeing play. They're just not as broken as they were, and people are still finding ways to play Yorion in Standard, Yorion Doom Foretold. You know, Yorion Miracles is a thing in Legacy. You know, modern players still love to loop their Mishra's Baubles. That's still happening, and it's fine.
And that's fine, right? So basically, the designer, so the designers like slipped it in the set. And didn't say nothing to the developers. And then they were like, oh, God, we broke it. And then they go to the developers and are like, can you teach us how to unbreak this card? And they're like, all right, fine, we'll do it. And then they
I heard some... We're very fortunate to be in the positions that we're in, that we hear a lot of things from the grapevine. Sure. And when the companion debacle was going on, I was hearing the craziest rumors from Wizards about like who was responsible, who was going to pay. And it was bad. It was bad.
It was bad. And, you know, and it's hard to know sort of what's going on inside the business, but we get, you know, access to a lot of data, like literally just yesterday. Some guy was like arguing with me, and he was like, Wizards doing awful. Like their paper magic's going down, digital's going up, and I'm like, dude, I've first of all, I work at Cool Stuff, and I can tell you you're wrong. And then secondly, I've seen a lot of data that is sensitive, and I can tell you the paper ain't going nowhere. Paper's doing just fine. Like it's doing great. So seriously, but LURRUS, man, I can't. All right. Okay, let's move on here to number 2. I don't have one yet, but hopefully soon. Ruben, what's your number 2?
So there was a bit of an omission in the Mikesies. I felt a little bad that this card didn't get the accolades that it very reasonably could have gotten. This is a card that has gotten at least one other card banned. It has breathed new life into lots of archetypes. It is the primary win condition in several decks. It has completely reformed a ton of different decks. And replaced a staple of many different formats. My number 2 is THASSA'S Oracle.
Yeah. My number 3.
My number 6.
THASSA'S Oracle is blue for a 1/3 Merfolk Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards in your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to one of them on top of your library, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. We're not done. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. That is a huge deal. This was like the primary win condition of a ton of decks. I mean, your Doomsdays have now changed entirely. Your ad nauseum decks have completely changed. Self-mill is a much more viable strategy. It's completely replaced Laboratory Maniac, a card that has been a staple since it was printed. It is just a very indelible card in multiple formats.
Yeah. Doomsday used to have a reputation of being one of the most difficult decks to pilot in the game, whether it be Legacy or Vintage. And I remember even just trying to get ready for the Vintage Super League, I would tell myself every season, like, this is going to be the season I learn Doomsday. And everybody I would go to notable Doomsday pilots, and they'd always be like, are you sure you're ready? Like, it had a reputation. Oh, yeah. And there were many articles written about the piles, about, you know, what was the right pile you needed to make. And then this card came along and simplified the process. Now, to be clear, Doomsday is still difficult to pilot. There are a lot of people who say that this card has made the deck stupid. Don't believe them. Like, I've gone in the Doomsday Discord.
It is slightly
They're
easier. Still
practically speaking in hieroglyphs. It's fine. But, you know, this card really did change everything. You know, Doomsday, Hermit Druid was seeing play in Vintage for a little while. Ad nauseum, it gave them another win condition. Modern Underworld Breach, they use this card to win the game when they deck themselves. You can now win with like Demonic Consultation, which is hilarious in Vintage. Saw play in Legacy, obviously. All sorts of neat fun. I think there was even like a mono blue Devotion in Standard that was like Nyx Lotus, Kiora, and all sorts of. And I was completely here for that. So I love this card. It's very controversial. Like a lot of people curse this card, but I think it's. And I was one of those people.
Fine.
I was one of those people where if you go back and look at my Twitter feed, you can see me cussing up a storm about this card, and now I love it, and I think it's great.
Well, from being sort of blocked banned to being loved, it's hard to go from there with Aaron. You normally just slam the door and we're done. THASSA'S Oracle got there. This was my number 3. It's hard to sort of overstate how changing how this card changed so many decks. It changed so many strategies, made new strategies out of nowhere, and anything that wins the game in a weird way, like that excites a whole new, different batch of players to play. They're like, this is awesome. This is how I'm going to win every time. Let's do this. And it made Doomsday easier. So
it got to a point where my Atris Oracle of Half-Truths Brawl deck that had a Gyruda companion, every game, all I wanted to do was win with THASSA'S Oracle. Like that's all I didn't care about anything else. I would just self-mill. Who cares what's happening? Here's a THASSA'S Oracle.
I think that's what they're doing in Legacy Oops. Just being able to dump your hand and then dread return a THASSA'S Oracle and then whoop.
Accidentally the whole deck, and we're done here. Aaron, what's number 2?
So my number 2 is a card that I just mentioned. This was another card that we saw coming a mile away. The minute this was spoiled, we were like, what on earth? Like, what are you thinking? How long until this takes over? And before you knew it, it was banned in Pioneer because it was one of the 2 combo decks that people could not dethrone. It was also banned in Legacy because it gave birth to a combo deck that, again, was just very, very difficult to interact with. It sees play in Vintage right now. And one of the things I love about the Vintage version is that it's been out for almost a year and people still cannot agree as to the right configuration of this. You would think that after the Doomsday decks are pretty much set at this point. Like we know what needs to be in Doomsday, but people still have not figured out the ideal deck for Vintage Underworld Breach. We've got like Grixis, we've got a 4-color, we've got a Teamer, we've got an Izzet, and I think that's beautiful. Underworld Breach is 1 colorless and a red as it is an enchantment from Theros Beyond Death that says each
This is so stupid. This card is very stupid.
Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. Every single one. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. At the beginning of the end step, you sacrifice Underworld Breach. Note, you do not exile this. So if you have like a Sun Titan laying around or any other way to get this back, you can do it all over again. But you would play this as a combo deck, and you would play this with a card called Brain Freeze, which Evan can tell you #storm in Walmart. So you basically play, your Brain Freeze, you mill yourself to feed your escape, and then you turn that Brain Freeze on your opponent. And so that's how the Legacy version worked. The modern version is really complicated. It runs like Grinding Station and Emery. It's a lot. And then you have the Vintage version, which people still have not perfected yet, but we knew this card was going to be trouble, and it's now banned in 2 formats, and I've actually played the deck, and it's hilarious.
This was stupid.
This was my number 9, by the way.
For the EDH players out there, I have found a lot of success with this as just a value card. Like if you're looking for good recursion in Red Commander, even if you're just recurring 1 or 2 spells, it's totally worth it. Trust me.
Card's insane. The fact that we were looking at this card and being like, is this as good as, even though it isn't, is this as good as Yawgmoth's Will? Right.
That's the conversation we're having.
When you get compared at least somewhat favorably to Yawgwill, it's a problem. And everyone saw this coming from a mile away. This was the topic of how fast until X card gets banned from X set. This one was the one. And it took, it was a matter of weeks. It was not very long.
It wasn't very long. How can you put these words on a Magic card and think that something's not going to break literally wide open?
Absolutely wild.
I just can't. What were they thinking? It's so ridiculous. This is the stuff that scares me. This is stuff where I'm just like, guys, what are you doing? Do you know what's happening here?
Look, at least they gave it to Red. So that Red could be
there you go.
So Red can do something
and this
weird.
is a Red card I enjoy playing.
There you go.
Fine. Okay, all right. So we're going to move on here to our number 1, our numero uno. and I've been absent for the past 2, so I'm going to take this one first.
Come on.
Okay.
Maybe this is on someone else's list. I don't know, but I cheated because sometimes you got to.
Hey.
And when
I had Demonic Tutor and Marrow-Gnar on my
did have
list,
Demonic
so
Tutor
you
and
go
Marrow,
ahead.
so. All I'm saying is when Wizards comes out with the best rare land cycle since Alpha,
Yeah,
I
these
gotta-
were very close to my list.
I got to give it up to the Pathway lands. The entire cycle of the Pathway lands.
Wow.
I almost put this on my
Absolutely.
list.
These things are incredible. I'm telling you, these are, you better buy your playset while they're nice and cheap these days. They're going to be just like Shocklands. They're going to be $20 a pop, if not more. Wait a couple years. Yes, these are the best dual lands they've ever made since the ugly ones with the weird color thing in the middle. Seriously, they're great. You can't fetch them, but that's literally the only downside. Every other, there's
That's
no...
lofty.
There is no reason you would
I
run
agree.
4 of these in your 2-color deck. It just does not matter. There's no downside. There's no drawback right now. There's no non-basic land hate. Like it's just, they're freaking incredible. So for those who don't know, for example, there is a Bark Channel Pathway, which is green on one side, and on the other side you can play it as Tide Channel Pathway, which taps for blue instead. So we have the entire cycle now, thanks to Kaldheim, where we have all 10 color combinations in pathway versions, and I love them. I can't get over how awesome they are.
These were very close to my list. I completely agree 100%. It let you play those crazy 4-color Omnath decks. The mana is as good as it's been since Khan's block.
Just wait till Kaldheim comes out and you got all 10 of them.
If fetches didn't exist, these would see play in Legacy and Vintage. If the Fetchland Shockland mana base with Shuffling and Brainstorm weren't so ubiquitous to the format, these might be better in some ways. It's just an incredibly powerful cycle that they put into the land set. So they had to live up to the hype of going back to Zendikar, being the land-based set and giving us a good cycle of dual lands, and they paid off.
They really did. I can't, like... The modal double face card thing is a huge breakthrough for Magic. I mean, I'm talking like it's going to impact Magic probably for the next 5-10 years plus, easy.
Yep.
And these were the cards. You're like, I hear a lot of stuff, right?
I
know
almost put something like Agadim's Awakening on my list too, because it's also the double face pay 3 life lands,
which is very cool.
But these are just like, so big.
When someone said they're going to make a land cycle that you can play either side, and they don't going to come into play tap, and I'm like, get out of here. They're not really going to give you just into one or the other, right? That's insane. They wouldn't do that, and then they did.
And here's the other crazy thing. They could print 10 more.
Yep.
Because only one color appears on the front and one color appears on the back. So they could theoretically give you the photo reverse, the photo negative.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah. So
in case Wizards ever needs to line their pockets some more,
and I'll take
which they would never need to do.
Which they would never.
No, they wouldn't put that in a secret layer that they only print there. All right, cool. Aaron, what's number 1?
All right, so I'm gonna do it. All right, that's fine. For me, I knew what number 1 had to be. I mean, no card has been as loved, as reviled. No card has seen just the multi-format impact and dominance that this card had. And more importantly, I want to talk about how this card has really just changed the way that people play Magic. My number 1 is Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. So Uro is 1 colorless, a green and a blue. It was printed in Theros Beyond Death. It's legendary creature, Elder Giant, 6 power, 6 toughness. When it enters the battlefield, you sacrifice it unless it's escaped. Fun fact, if you living end, when Uro's in the graveyard, Uro dies because you didn't pay for it. So
it's true.
Whenever Uro enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card.
Yeah.
And you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It also has an escape of 2 blue and 2 green, and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. Banned and standard. This is what people want to be doing right now. Like when you look at all of the things that people can do. When you look at Modern and you say, what would you like to do in Modern? You can have a turn 3 Tron. You can play Dredge. You can Storm. You can play Burn. People want this. People want the comfort of knowing that they're gaining 3 life, that they're drawing cards, that they're making their land draws. People want that feeling of comfort and control. You go to Legacy. What do you want to do in Legacy? You can play Storm. You can play, Death and Taxes. You can play Delver. Nope. We want want to play Uro. And so you are seeing this, it literally changing the game, that people are saying this mid-range life is what we want to be doing. You even look at, Omnitel. Omnitel used to be a combo deck in Legacy, a blue-black combo deck. It is now a Sultai deck because they've decided that they need this card and Oko to make them whole again. Like, this is changing the way that people want to play Magic. It is that powerful. And so in addition to, just how much play it's seeing, it's changed the game. People want to play this fair style of Magic right now, and I can't understate that enough. Like, the impact of this card is just huge.
This was my number
Card's
2.
absurd.
Yeah.
This was my number 5.
Nice. Yeah, this was, we've talked a lot about it. We've certainly talked a lot about Titans. Titans are a weird way for Wizards to print very high power and toughness and very low mana cost, which is somewhat appreciated, but the little tricks you get to do, they add up. For example, you greater good, you sacrifice it while it's the sacrifice thing's on the stack. Another one I found I thought was really fun was Crystal Shard. You're like, for 4 mana, you just keep the loop. You just get to
keep the
game
loop
through and draw
it.
cards the whole time. It's fun. Everybody gets to do it. The fact that the land comes into play in untapped is another thing. Like, they didn't need to, but they did. The extended art foil is $200.
They banned Growth Spiral in Standard.
Yep.
Then they put Growth Spiral on a 6/6. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, let's be real.
It's also so expensive on Magic Online that, like, people can't afford to play this card.
$75, 75 tickets.
Yeah, so it's been higher. There have been I think there was one day I was looking at playing it just for giggles. It was 90 some. So people can't even really. Not that they want to, but it says something about this card, that the demand for it, and
This is one of those, like, we've come to the point, I think, in Historic on Arena where, like, you're either playing Uro or you're playing against it. There's no two ways about it. We're in a Mind Sculptor situation, essentially, and it's rough. But, Ruben, what was your number 1 card?
Does anyone have a higher left?
Nope.
All right. Well,
let's
see if you can predict what I put at my number 1, because this is the card I thought to myself, it's not predict.
Please tell me it's not Space Corona, whatever.
It is not Space Corona.
Thank you.
When I think of 2020 and I think of my favorite card, my highest impact card, what I want to be doing with my life, there is only one thing I want to be doing, and that's putting lots of goblins into play with Muxus Goblin Grandy.
Yeah.
That's all I want to be doing with my life. And so I had to have it be my number 1 card.
Sure.
Muxus Goblin Grandy is 4 colorless red for a legendary creature, Goblin Noble. He's a 4/4, or they're a 4/4, since technically it's a group of goblins. When Muxus Goblin Grandy enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library, put all goblin creature cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever Muxus attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other goblin you control. When I was playing Historic Goblins, and I was thinking to myself, this deck is almost perfect. This deck needs a 2-drop, and I got Conspicuous Snoop. This deck needs a big top end something. Like, Siege Gang Commander's fine. It's like, it's not exactly where I want to be, but I want to be doing something big with my Skirk Prospectors and my late game mana. And then they gave us Muxus and Jumpstart, and it's like, this is like a hug from Jesus. This is it's a hug from Muxus. It's exactly what I wanted to be doing with my life. It is a slot machine that sometimes just wins outright. Everything just works together. The whole deck just became like, all right, let's get our Prospectors and our wily goblins and try to put a Muxus into play on turn 3. And it's exactly what I want to be doing with my life. It made goblins relevant again. Y'all, goblins hasn't been good
in a very long time.
In a long time. And the fact that people were like, goblins is too good, it might need to get banned, made me feel happy. Even during the days that I thought they might ban Muxus, I was like, you know what? I had my fun.
What a way to
I'm
go.
Okay.
There was a minute there where I was like, am I getting wild cards? Are they going to turn that thing off or whatever? But Muxus has been sort of a revolution for Goblin decks. Wizards, like, the only reason it says 5 or less is so it doesn't trigger another Muxus, basically. Because, like, I have gone literally from no board to they conceded
to kill you. Yeah,
because I got a Muxus.
They wrath, and then I play a Muxus, and then they take 400. Like, it's crazy.
There's Krinkos, and there's some kings that give them haste, and there's +1/+1 and whatever. Swing for $1 million. Card is absolutely Fantastic.
I just can't stop smiling when I think about playing Muxus. It makes me so happy.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that was our top 10 cards of 2020. You'll see them on the screen right now. If you review, take a look at my list, Aaron's list, and Ruben's top 10. And we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
This was fun. I hope 2021 is slightly less of a dumpster fire than 2020 from both a real world and Magic the Gathering perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, if the real world could stop giving us dumpster juice, that'd be great. Thanks.
But we have a tree that makes everything changelings, apparently.
It's true.
That's going to be fun, fun, fun. Well,
That's right.
we go to our final slide here. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicescast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.